I am the daughter of the current Grand General. The young master of the Marquis estate knelt before the Emperor for months, pleading until His Majesty arranged my marriage into the Marquis household. Everyone says that the gates of nobility are as deep as the sea. When I first entered the Marquis estate, I naively believed that a well-matched marriage would make it easier to get along. With my family background and the education I received from the General's household, I thought I could at least secure a peaceful life in the Marquis estate. Yet men in this world are all fickle and self-willed, especially those from noble and official families. In their eyes, even daughters of prestigious families are merely tools for exchanging power, used to strengthen each other's influence both in and out of court. No matter how talented, courageous, or broad-minded a woman may be, she cannot compete with the allure of a tender embrace, nor overcome the sorrow of having no heirs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. Heartbroken and alone, I died a miserable death in the General's mansion, but when I was reborn, I vowed to stand in the imperial court and crush the Marquis's household beneath my feet. In my previous life, that wretched maid was caught red-handed poisoning my food. I made her kneel alone under the pear blossom tree in the courtyard, and the Marquis rushed over upon hearing the news. As soon as the Marquis entered my courtyard and saw you kneeling there, he said, "Madam, you deserves to die for such a crime, but I beg you to spare her life for the sake of the son she has borne for the Marquis household." The Marquis, with his inherently cold and calculating nature, knew I had no children of my own and repeatedly used the issue of heirs to threaten me. Several months ago, the Marquis brought back his mistress, Lady Yu, and their son. I had long heard that this woman, who came from the pleasure quarters, relied on her bewitching and seductive face to charm the Marquis into redeeming her. He bought a small courtyard outside the city, hired a few servants, and kept her there. Who would have thought this lowly woman would prove so fertile, giving the Marquis a son in just a few short years? I had borne no children myself. Though I disliked the woman's origins, the child was, after all, the Marquis's flesh and blood. The lineage of the Marquis's household. The officer temporarily settled the mother and son in a separate courtyard, unaware that a moment of soft-heartedness would ultimately cost him his life. Lady Yu knelt and pleaded with me, "Madam, I know I was wrong. I am willing to leave the Marquis' residence." Seeing her pitiful appearance, I thought, after all, she was just a poor woman adrift in these troubled times. Seeing that I remained silent, she crawled on her knees to me and said, "I am willing to have my son adopted by you. Madam, I only beg you to spare my life. In my previous life, how could I have known that this despicable woman, you, after failing to poison me, would feign pity and pretend to give her son to me? In reality, she was merely planting a spy by my side to bring about my demise. To climb the social ladder, she even went so far as to incite her own son to harm me, and I, having grown up in the General's manor, had never before encountered such vile and vulgar tactics. Even a vicious tiger does not devour its own cubs. Yet this woman was willing to trade her own son for power. Seeing the Marquis continuously pleading for her, I ultimately relented and sent Lady Yu to an estate outside. The servants brought in Lady Yu's son. This was my first time seeing the boy who was about to be adopted by me. The child bore a striking resemblance to the Marquis, with eyes as clear as water. Dressed in simple and elegant clothing, his face was full of tension and timidity. Seeing the Marquis and me seated in the main hall, under the guidance of the servants, he knelt and bowed to me. "Child, do you have a name?" I asked, looking at the child below the hall. "Mother calls me Dog Egg, saying it's easy to raise." The child replied. It was clear that this child had been living quite well. The Marquis had spent a considerable amount of money on this mother and son living outside the main household. Seeing such a clever child, I couldn't help but feel fondness. After all, he is of the Marquis's bloodline, and it is my responsibility to nurture him. "Child, since you have paid your respects to me today, from now on, I shall be your mistress." The Marquis's household is not some rustic village dwelling. The descendants of the Marquis must be named according to the household's rules. Starting tomorrow, your name shall be Xian Li. I hope you will be inspired to achieve great things and protect both your family and this household. Xian Li knelt down with a thud. I kowtow in gratitude to my mistress. The Marquis watched the child with a complex and affectionate gaze. "Marquis, I will treat your offspring well. You can rest assured." Anyang harmed the mistress, but the mistress, in her kindness, spared her life. Xian Li walked up to me and took my hand. This child is quite filial, unlike his cunning mother. I felt greatly comforted in my heart, as if seeing hope for the future of the Marquis household. Who would have known that this boy, under Madame Yu's guidance, had long learned to deceive me with a hypocritical facade? Who could have imagined that a child could be so deeply cunning? I am the only daughter of General Lin, the great general of the current dynasty. My father followed the late emperor in battles across the south and north, conquering the vast territories of this empire. Back then, the Marquis coveted my maternal family's influence in the court. In order to marry me, he knelt outside the emperor's study in the bitter cold of winter. The biting cold wind left his face ashen. Yet he never gave up despite repeatedly falling in front of the hall. His persistence ultimately moved the benevolent emperor. The emperor arranged my marriage into the Marquis's household and bestowed upon me the title of first-rank lady. The Marquis welcomed me into his residence with overwhelming joy, treating me with utmost respect. Yet beneath it all, he was truly cold and unfeeling, weighing the pros and cons. Being my wife is the best choice for him and for the Marquis estate. The Marquis estate had already fallen into decline when the old Marquis was alive, and its influence in the court was weakening day by day, ever since the Marquis married me, relying on the power of the general's estate. The emperor has placed more and more trust in him, but the Marquis doesn't love me. Men are all too fond of the insincere affections and flattery of courtesans. These despicable methods that I cannot stand are precisely the reason why the Marquis favors Lady Yu. Since my eldest son, Xuanli, moved in to live with me, he has been well-behaved and sensible. Obedient to me as the head lady of the house, which has greatly pleased me. Under my guidance, he has become polite and proper in his interactions with others, bringing me great comfort. Xuanli is very intelligent and shows me respect and filial piety, paying his respects and serving tea every day, often bringing me my favorite pastries. Even a biological son could not have been better. Leah is still a child, like a blank sheet of paper, and I will certainly raise him well. I spent a considerable amount of silver to hire 2 tutors from the private school to teach him the 4 books and 5 classics individually. As I had hoped, in just a few short months, the child could already compose essays with ease and write in a beautiful hand. I was very pleased and often kept him by my side, nurturing him with great care. The Marquis was so delighted by Xuanli's promising future that he couldn't stop smiling, often praising Xuanli in front of others. He commended him for being clever and sensible, a talent with great potential. Days passed by peacefully and quietly. In my previous life, if I had paid a little more attention to this child, I wouldn't have lost my dear life. In my previous life, I never would have imagined that the eldest son I had poured my heart and soul into raising would turn out to be an ungrateful wolf cub. This winter, the snow arrived unusually early. Flakes as large as goose feathers drifted down one after another. Standing under the corridor, I watched as the snow blanketed the Marquis's estate, making it look like a fairy draped in silver. Xian Li has grown into a handsome and dashing young man. I often look at him, my heart filled with comfort and pride. The future glory of the Marquis's household rests on this child. Lately, I've been feeling unwell, with constant dizziness, as if the world is spinning around me. Xian Li, as usual, brought me some pastries. Madam, these are Osmanthus cakes I made for you. This child is truly thoughtful. Knowing my fondness for sweet pastries, he has been making various kinds all these years, never once changing his ways. Leah finished speaking and offered the pastry. This Osmanthus cake was exquisitely beautiful, like a golden full moon resting quietly on an exquisite porcelain plate. Its texture resembled fine jade, glowing with a soft golden hue, and the surface was dotted with specks of Osmanthus flowers. I was overjoyed and picked one up, taking a gentle bite. The cake melted in my mouth like snowflakes, and the fragrance of Osmanthus immediately filled the air, making me feel as though I was standing in an autumn Osmanthus grove. But then, my vision went dark, and I lost consciousness in an instant. In that final moment, all I saw was Leah standing before me, watching me collapse with an expressionless face. By the time I woke up, the snow outside had stopped, and as far as the eye could see, the entire Marquis's estate was blanketed in a vast expanse of white. I lay on the bed, my heart as cold as ice. Recalling the way Xuanli had looked at me in the end, I seemed to understand something. My whole body felt cold and weak, as if it no longer belonged to me. My limbs were powerless. So I called for Xiaohong to bring me some hot tea. After recovering slightly, Xiaohong helped me sit up. I asked her to fetch my mink coat and drape it over me. Then had her support me as I went to the inner hall to see what was going on. In my previous life, I could never have imagined what this foster son, whom I had so carefully nurtured, had actually done to me. The snow-white Marquis manor was particularly conspicuous. Treading through the snow, my heart was filled with desolation. I never expected that over all these years, such deep resentment had been planted in that child's heart by the Yu family. Entering the inner hall, I saw my father. His hair completely white, yet the years spent on the battlefield had left a fierce aura between his brows, commanding authority even without anger. My elder brother's expression was grave, his gaze fixed fiercely on the Marquis and Xian Li standing below the hall. "You're awake, little sister." My elder brother rushed to me as soon as he saw me, a glimmer of light flashing in his eyes. I nodded, went over to pay my respects to father, and then looked at Xuanli. My heart was a turmoil of mixed emotions, both pained and disappointed. "Little sister, this ungrateful wretch actually dared to harm you," my elder brother said furiously. "Xuanli, do you admit your guilt?" Xuanli knelt on the ground and lifted his head. "I admit my guilt," he said in a low voice, his words filled with anger. I walked up to Xian Li, looking at this child I had once placed such high hopes in, my heart aching with sorrow. "Leah, why did you do this?" Father didn't wait for Xian Li to answer, pointing his sword directly at him. "You unfilial son, how dare you plot against the mistress?" Father shouted loudly, the gleam of his sword flickering, exuding a chilling aura. The Marquis feared my father's authority and dared not speak much with my elder brother, so he had no choice but to come to me. "Madam, I know Xuanli was wrong, but he is the bloodline of the Marquis's household," the Marquis said softly. "Moreover, back when you drove Lady Yu away, I did not complain." I sneered at him, my heart filled with disappointment. After all these years of giving so much for him, he still pined for that beloved mistress of his. What does the bond between husband and wife amount to? It cannot compare to the affection between lovers. I looked towards Xian Li, but he did not back down. Instead, he coldly pointed at me and cursed, "You poisonous woman, after you drove my mother away, she fell ill and died out there." My elder brother immediately ordered Xiao Hong to fetch the Osmanthus cakes that Leah had sent over yesterday. He took a silver needle, pricked one of the cakes, and in an instant, the needle turned black. My face darkened along with the silver needle. How dare he tamper with my food as well? I walked over to the Marquis and slowly sat down beside him. "Marquis, you knew that Leah had tampered with the pastries, didn't you?" The Marquis's face was deathly pale, while my father and eldest brother glared at him with ferocious expressions. "In truth, in my previous life, Lady Yu did not die of illness." The Marquis had secretly continued to keep her hidden away. The three of them often gathered behind my back, plotting their reunions. When there is a will to condemn, excuses are never lacking. It was all just a scheme to deceive my father and brother. What a cunning and calculating family they were. Father and son conspired together, adding a small amount of a drug called luo hui to the pastries they sent me. As the Marquis knows, this drug is colorless and tasteless. With long-term consumption, it causes confusion, weakness throughout the body, and eventually leads to a coma. A wave of sorrow washed over me. The son I had raised for so many years had actually harbored such hatred for me all along. And I had been completely unaware. I watched Xian Li grow up and treated him as my own. Never would I have thought that in my past life, he would resent me because of the slander from the Yu family and even wish to harm me. They had no idea that after Lady Yu entered the estate, she not only attempted to poison me behind the Marquis and the eldest son's backs but also had an affair with a young servant, to protect the Marquis's estate and the dignity of this adopted son. I had no choice but to drive her out. "In your previous life, my lord, if you had known that your beloved mistress was having an affair with a servant, how would you have felt?" I turned and left the inner hall, my heart filled with desolation. I had no desire at all to speak the truth. A fit of urgent coughing, and Xiao Hong saw the bright red bloodstains on the handkerchief, quickly returning to the inner hall to call her elder brother. "I'm afraid that after all these years, the toxicity of the falling dust has already invaded my internal organs." When my elder brother learned that I was seriously ill, his face instantly turned pale. "Little sister, how are you?" he asked urgently, his voice trembling. I signaled to him not to worry, although my body was growing weaker day by day. My heart was unusually calm. "I really want to return to General Lin's residence. Elder brother, can you take me home? Noble titles, heirs, and official honors are nothing but shackles that bind me." My elder brother helped me into the inner hall again, and I looked at Xian Li kneeling before the hall and said to the Marquis, "My lord, we have been husband and wife for so long. Please grant me a way out. Let us part amicably." The endless suspicion, conflict, scheming, and betrayal in this mansion are truly tiresome. Sitting in this matriarch's position, every moment must be spent upholding the Marquis's household's reputation, dignity, and honor. I am so weary and tired of being the mistress of this Marquis household." Upon hearing this, the Marquis looked at me in disbelief, but my heart remained utterly calm. This man never loved me. What he valued was only the family influence behind me and the title of a titled lady. I returned to the General's Manor, this place where I grew up. For many years, the courtyard I lived in before my marriage had been maintained exactly as it was when I left. With servants tidying it every day, months passed in the blink of an eye, and it was once again the season when pear blossoms bloomed. The pear blossoms in the courtyard were pruned in a layered, elegant manner, blooming exceptionally beautifully. Not long after, the Marquis's divorce letter was delivered to the Lin family. My father and eldest brother sought the imperial physician from the palace to carefully nurse me back to health. However, the poison of luohui had already seeped deep into my bones, and even the imperial physician was at a loss, only able to prescribe some medicines to barely keep me alive. Every day, as I drank the bitter medicinal brew, I gazed at the blooming pear tree outside the window, feeling an inexplicable sense of loss welling up in my heart. The emperor decreed that father lead troops to the northern frontier to fight, with my eldest brother accompanying the army, before their departure. They came to my bedside. The war was urgent, and we didn't know how long it would be before we could reunite. I smiled, frail as a withered branch, but my voice was firm and clear. "Go ahead, I'll wait for your return." After father and elder brother left, I stopped taking the life-prolonging medicine prescribed by the imperial physician, ordering the maids to secretly pour it out under the pear blossom tree every day. Lying alone in bed, I gazed at the sky outside. Would the wind and snow of the northern frontier be as pure and flawless as these pear blossoms? I drifted away alone, falling petal by petal with the pear blossoms, turning into spring soil. At the moment of death, the agony of my soul tearing away from my body was heart-wrenching. If I could be reborn, I would surely make everyone in the Marquis's household pay the price. The moment I drifted away, I actually saw the Marquis bring Lady Yu back, placing her in the position of the main wife. He ordered all the pear trees I had planted in the courtyard during my lifetime to be cut down. The adopted son I had painstakingly raised held Yu Niang's hand, watching the servants chop down the trees with a satisfied smile. That Yu Niang, I had overlooked the fact that, having grown up with Xian Li since childhood, all the pastries she sent over were made by her own hands. Suddenly recalling the meaningful glances exchanged between her and Xian Li, I understood everything. "Father, elder brother, forgive me for not waiting until your glorious return. It pains me deeply to have you, with your white hair, send off one with black hair. I cannot bear to let you suffer such agony. I have been reborn, returning to the day the Yu family entered the mansion. In this life, I will surely make everyone in the entire Marquis household pay for the life I lived before." The pear blossoms in the Marquis estate are still in full bloom, their petals pure and flawless. Lady Yu knelt on the ground covered with petals, her colorful silk skirt stained with spots of white petal juice. I reached out and broke off a branch, bringing it to my nose for a sniff. Its delicate fragrance was refreshing and invigorating. Lady Yu hung her head low, her trembling shoulders revealing the panic and unease within her heart. Recalling all she had done to me in my previous life, I gritted my teeth, wishing I could tear her limb from limb. This seemingly delicate woman, beneath her charming appearance, possesses a heart more venomous than that of a snake or scorpion. A few months ago, I went to the palace to beg His Majesty for permission to allow the Marquis to accompany the imperial procession on the southern tour, a great opportunity for promotion. Out of respect for my father and brother's contributions, the emperor could not easily refuse me and thus took the Marquis along on the journey south. This heartless and faithless man, while feigning immense gratitude toward me, did not forget to seek comfort with his mistress before leaving, giving her a large sum of silver. If I don't send the Marquis away, how can I slip the aphrodisiac to Lady Yu and catch her in the act with the servant? In my past life, wasn't she fond of poisoning? This time, let her taste what it's like to be drugged. I glanced at her and said coldly, "Lady Yu, do you know your crime?" Lady Yu looked up at me, her voice trembling with guilt. "The Marquis is not in the residence. I don't know what crime I've committed." I let out a cold laugh and casually tossed the pear blossom in my hand to the ground, its petals scattering in all directions. That wretched maid. I had painstakingly cultivated all the pear blossom trees in this entire Marquis estate for so many years, yet in my previous life, after I died, she had them all chopped down, roots and all. I walked slowly toward her, my voice icy and resolute. "Innocent, you, who have been secretly involved with a labour, how dare you claim innocence?" Lady Yu widened her eyes in terror, kowtowing repeatedly and begging for mercy. "Spare me, my lady. I know I was wrong. I beg you to spare my life." I glanced at her coldly and said indifferently, "Lady Yu, born of lowly origins and engaged in despicable behavior, has brought disgrace to the Marquis's household. Grant her the scarlet punishment." Upon hearing this, Lady Yu's face instantly turned deathly pale, her eyes filled with despair and terror. She shouted at me angrily, "The Marquis will never forgive you when he returns. You lowly wretch still dare to talk back." I swept a sharp, icy glare over her. Seeing my anger, the matron under my command stepped forward and slapped her twice across the face. Mothers, accustomed to rough work, how could their strength be endured by delicate women? In an instant, 2 palm prints appeared distinctly on Yusha's face, and she collapsed to the ground. I immediately had the servants from the estate drag out that laborer. The laborer had already been beaten by the servants until his flesh was torn and bleeding, and he was carried into the inner courtyard. Upon seeing Lady Yu, a glimmer of hope flashed in the laborer's eyes. Ignoring his injuries, he crawled toward her. "Madam, a night of marriage creates a bond of 100 nights. I beg you, save me." The laborer clutched Lady Yu's feet, pleading desperately. A flicker of fear passed through Madame Yu's eyes. She kicked the servant away and crawled on her knees toward me. Step by step, her face was deathly pale as she said in a trembling voice, "Mistress, I know I was wrong." "No, you were wrong. Do you think I'll let you off just because you admit your mistake? What about the life I needlessly lost in my previous life? Has any of you ever felt a shred of pity for me? Drag this wretched maid away and execute her by caning." I shouted sternly. Upon hearing this, Yusha's face turned ashen, and she ceased all resistance, tears streaming down her cheeks. Several sturdy maids immediately stepped forward and pinned her down firmly. The punishment of the scarlet rod was undoubtedly a fate worse than death for a delicate woman like her. Her piercing, agonizing screams echoed through every corner of the Marquis's estate. At this moment, my heart remained calm and undisturbed. The poison that had taken effect before my death in my previous life had tormented me to the point of delirium. That kind of pain, this wretched maid could not repay it even if she died 10 times over. Under the pear blossom tree, white petals and red bloodstains intertwined, creating a shocking scene. The servants around all lowered their heads, not daring to take another look, afraid of bringing trouble upon themselves. Madame Yu's screams gradually weakened until they finally fell silent. I waved my hand to dismiss the maids, then turned and walked toward the mansion. Behind, under the pear blossom tree, Lady Yu's body still lay there, the blood having already stained the surrounding earth. I ordered the servants to wrap up Lady Yu's body. Her body was already mangled and bloody, yet she still wore that seductive, fox-like face, utterly nauseating. Her eyes were now hollow and lifeless, seemingly still holding traces of the fear and despair from before her death. I ordered the butler to throw her body into the mass grave outside the city, leaving it to be devoured by wild dogs. "Keep that servant alive for me. When the Marquis returns, let him see how his beloved mistress treated him." As night fell, a cold, clear moonlight enveloped the pear tree, and pear blossoms drifted down one by one. Early the next morning, I called for Xiaohong. She is the maid I brought from my maiden home, who has been with me since childhood and is my confidant. "Xiaohong, find a few gossiping nannies, give them some silver, and have them spread the news that Yu Shu is having an affair with a servant." Xiaohong widened her eyes and stared at me in a daze. She wanted to ask something but didn't know how to start. She knew that I valued the reputation of the Marquis's household the most, and today's actions were truly somewhat baffling. "Yes, madam." Xiaohong took the silver and left to handle the matter. I knew Xiaohong must have been shocked by my handling of Yu Shu and my actions today that tarnished the Marquis estate's reputation, unable to comprehend how her kind and benevolent mistress could suddenly become so ruthless. If she had gone through what I did, she might have acted even more decisively than I did. Soon, with my encouragement, rumors such as the Marquis keeps a mistress and has a son with her, and the Marquis's mistress was caught having an affair with a laborer spread throughout the capital, completely ruining the reputation of the Marquis estate and the Marquis himself. I'm afraid it won't be long before His Majesty learns that while the Marquis once earnestly sought to marry me in front of the imperial study, he is now keeping a courtesan outside. And the Marquis's household has stirred up this scandalous affair of illicit relations. His Majesty has always valued marital fidelity and moral integrity the most. Otherwise, how could he have been deceived by the Marquis's false facade back then? A few months later, the Marquis returned. As soon as he entered the city, he heard the commoners gossiping about the Marquis's household. The Marquis returned to the estate with a gloomy expression. finding everything in order as usual. Except for the absence of Lady Yu, he then intended to seek her out in the side courtyard. It truly echoed the saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, no need, that wretched servant has already been beaten to death. I glanced at the Marquis and said nonchalantly. The Marquis was stunned, standing there in a daze for a long time. It seemed he had guessed something. The Marquis would never have imagined I could be so ruthless, in my past life. I would have felt guilty even for stepping on an ant. Marquis, Lady Yu has been having an affair with a servant. Fortunately, she hasn't been given official status yet. It's better to have her beaten to death and thrown out. Everyone outside knows that the Marquis keeps a mistress, and that this mistress has been unfaithful with a servant. If she isn't dealt with, the Marquis estate will become the laughingstock of the entire capital. If this reaches the Emperor's ears, your career prospects would likely become quite difficult. I know this man, I've lived a lifetime with all too well. He is shrewd and calculating, cherishing his own pride above all else, always feigning courtesy and diplomacy. He is selfish and hypocritical, and in every matter, he weighs the pros and cons to make the choice most beneficial to himself and the Marquis's estate. I am aware that the Marquis holds some affection for this woman. You, after all, any man, especially one like him, cannot resist the charms of a courtesan, but compared to the future of the Marquis's estate and his own, the life of such a woman is something he would not hesitate to sacrifice. I had a precise grasp of the Marquis's weakness, and every word I spoke hit right where it hurt, making it impossible for him to blame me for the loss of Lady Yu. Marquis, that servant is still clinging to half a life. Would you like to verify it yourself? I continued to rub salt into the Marquis's wounds, and watching his desolate expression gave me an indescribable sense of satisfaction. After a long silence, he turned to me and said, "No need, banish that adulterer from the estate. Where is that child of the Yu family? He is staying in the side courtyard, with 2 capable nannies assigned to take care of his daily needs." I handed a freshly brewed cup of tea to the Marquis and helped him sit down. Why would I let that little brat die so easily? In my previous life, that adopted son took my life. Wouldn't letting him die easily in this life be too merciful? I will raise him with great care, making sure he tastes the bitterness of being betrayed by someone close. The servant brought in the child, whose face was carved from the same mold as the Marquis. In this life, the more I look at him, the more disgusted I feel. The Marquis watched the child with a complex and affectionate gaze. It's only natural for objects to evoke memories of people, let alone seeing the son and thinking of the mother. Is the Marquis now playing the role of deeply affectionate in front of his son again? When you remained silent about Lady Yu's death to preserve your own reputation, did you ever consider how this child would feel? This selfish and unfeeling man, in my past life, I naively cared for him in every way. How foolish I was, watching Lady Yu's son kneeling in the hall. I gave him the same name as in my previous life, Xian Li. In this life, I will push this ambitious and promising adopted son of the Marquis household step by step into the abyss. Marquis, a few days ago when I entered the palace, my elder brother mentioned that the prince is in need of a study companion. I noticed that Leah is about the same age as the prince. Why not send him to the palace to serve as a companion and secure a bright future for him? I said to the Marquis while looking at Xian Li. Upon hearing my words, the Marquis immediately beamed with joy. My wife is always so thoughtful. Those who serve as study companions to the prince are often valued by the court in the future. Who knows? He might even catch the Emperor's eye and be chosen as a royal son-in-law. What a glorious honor that would be for the family. The Marquis was well aware of the stakes involved. How could he not be overjoyed? One important reason I sent Xuanli to the palace was that, in my previous life, my elder brother had always disapproved of this adopted son. My elder brother was a grand academician of the Hanlin Academy, highly esteemed by the Emperor for his character and learning, and was appointed as the Crown Prince's tutor by imperial decree. In my previous life, my elder brother repeatedly came to the Marquis' residence to warn me to be cautious of that adopted son. As the saying goes, dragons beget dragons, phoenixes beget phoenixes, and the son of a rat will dig holes. I always thought nothing of it. After all, he was just a child, a blank slate. How bad could he possibly be? If only I had listened to my elder brother's advice in my previous life, I wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. I brought Xuanli into the palace with me and cleverly arranged for Yu Niang to accompany him, attending to his daily needs. Xuanli held my hand, expressing endless gratitude. How could I not be aware of his little feelings for Yu Niang? In my previous life, in order to harm me, Yu Niang did not hesitate to stir up trouble and exert her efforts behind the scenes. It was all just to get rid of me, the mistress, so that she could rightfully become the concubine of the eldest son of the Marquis household. Speaking of this Yu Niang, she also came from a poor family. Early on, the Marquis bought her and arranged for her to serve as a maid for Xian Li under Lady Yu. She had delicate skin and a gentle, refined appearance, and her temperament could be described as gentle and graceful. I killed Lady Yu, and this month, that woman will surely speak ill of me in front of Xuanli, doing everything she can to stir up trouble. In this life, I have finally seen my elder brother again. He is just as handsome as in the previous life, his charm unchanged, with no trace of time on his face. Dressed in his court attire, he appears even more elegant and noble, commanding respect from all who see him. When he saw me, his eyes were still filled with the same indulgence and care as in the previous life. "Little sister, you've returned too." This sentence made everything clear to me. As I exchanged glances with my elder brother, I realized that he, like me, had been reborn. Without another thought, I called for Xian Li. "Xian Li, this is my elder brother. From now on, he will be your enlightenment teacher." I brought Xuanli to pay respects to my elder brother as his teacher, and he gifted Xuanli a wolf hairbrush bestowed by the emperor. "Child, I accept this teacher-student ceremony out of respect for your mother. This is my gift in return." Elder brother tossed the brush to Xuanli and never looked at him again. He then ordered the servants to take Xuanli and Yu Niang away. It turned out that on the battlefield in the northern frontier, my elder brother died in battle while trying to save our father. On the day of my passing, he has returned to this life together with me. "Sister, what are your plans for this life? I want everyone in the Marquis household to pay the price." The moonlight was splendid, the night as tranquil as water. As I strolled along the palace path with my elder brother understood full well my intentions in sending Xian Li and Yu Niang into the palace, and he patted my shoulder. "Don't worry, little sister, I will definitely keep a close watch on that rebellious son." I smiled. "Elder brother, you don't need to restrain him. Xian Li is exceptionally intelligent, and His Majesty will soon take notice of him." In the previous life, he developed feelings for Yu Niang. They share a destined bond, and in this life, Xian Li will inevitably be unable to escape this fate. "Elder brother, can you arrange an audience for me with the emperor?" Under the moonlight, the pavilions and towers of the palace seemed draped in a layer of silver gauze, faintly visible, more enchanting than a celestial realm. I was born and raised in a general's household, possessing talents and courage beyond ordinary women. In my previous life, bound by worldly constraints, I had no choice but to dutifully fulfill my role as a matron. But in this life, I will become a female prime minister who wields power over the entire court. My elder brother was astonished by my transformation. He praised me, saying I truly lived up to being a child of the Lin family, that regardless of gender, serving the country should be one's ultimate duty. I frequently entered and exited the imperial palace. With my elder brother's assistance, I offered insightful views on court affairs, and soon the emperor took notice of me. Aside from her father and brothers, the Lin family has produced such a resourceful and wise woman. I am deeply pleased. The emperor has repeatedly praised the Lin family in court, and all the civil and military officials know that the Lin family's daughter has won the emperor's deep favor. Xuanli, who served as a study companion for the prince in the palace, soon grew into a handsome and dashing young man. Under the pretext of caring for my eldest son's studies, I often went to the imperial study to visit my elder brother. By chance, I saw Yu Niang accompanying Xuanli in his studies. She gently held his hand, stroke by stroke, following Xuanli as he copied the texts. Leah gazed at Yu Niang, his focused and longing eyes filled with the affection between a man and a woman. Indeed, in this life, Xian Li could not escape the emotional entanglement with Yu Niang. I told my elder brother that there was no need to stop them, let them love freely, as expected. The emperor frequently visited the imperial study to supervise the prince's studies, and Xian Li's intelligence greatly pleased the emperor. In my previous life, I had also heard that the northern frontier demanded the marriage of the eldest princess to cease the war. All the civil and military officials knelt before the emperor, pleading for him to send the eldest princess to bring an end to the endless conflict between the two sides. That is the emperor's most beloved princess, a pearl held in the palm of his hand since childhood, and the emperor has been reluctant to give his consent. However, even as a member of the royal family, enjoying the worship of all the people and possessing all the glory and wealth in the world, marriage is a matter that concerns the entire nation and its people. In the end, for the safety of the common people, The emperor had no choice but to reluctantly part with his beloved daughter and sent the eldest princess to the northern border for a political marriage. Unfortunately, before my tragic death in my previous life, during the battle fought by my father and brothers, the eldest princess was brutally killed by the king of the northern border, her body discarded beyond the frontier, as an act of vengeance against our dynasty, in both lifetimes. I have watched the princess grow up and deeply understand the emperor's dilemma. In this life, I must find a way to save her, at least prevent her from dying tragically in a foreign land. I brought the Marquis with me to see the emperor. Before this, I had already analyzed the pros and cons of the situation with the Marquis, hinting that he should ask the emperor for Princess Xuanli's hand in marriage on behalf of his son. The Marquis is an extremely intelligent man. Without needing much explanation from me, having served in the court for so many years, he naturally understands what this marriage would mean for the Marquis household. In the grand hall, the solemn and dignified atmosphere was like solidified amber, tightly enveloping every faint sound. Xian Li and Yu Niang waited outside the hall. I followed the Marquis to the front of the imperial carriage, gazing at the towering hall that stood before us like a majestic golden mountain. Today, I would finally witness the fate of that adopted son. After we, the couple, completed the grand ceremony, the Marquis eagerly spoke up. I beseech your majesty to grant the marriage of the eldest princess to the Marquis's eldest son, Xian Li. The emperor seemed somewhat hesitant. Every golden brick in the hall had been meticulously polished by time, as if waiting for this farce to unfold. Seeing that the emperor had not yet responded, the Marquis knelt once more and said, "My son has long admired the eldest princess and earnestly seeks to take her as his principal wife. Rise and speak, Marquis." The emperor shifted on his dragon throne. "I have always held your son in high regard. If he wishes to seek the princess's hand, he may be summoned as her consort." Sunlight streamed through the intricately carved window lattices, casting mottled shadows upon the floor. The emperor's words sliced through the solemn atmosphere like a sharp blade. That reckless youth Xian Li, paying no heed to the guards and eunuchs trying to restrain him, rushed into the main hall and knelt before the emperor. "Your Majesty, Xian Li cannot marry the princess." The Marquis, caught completely off guard by his beloved son's utterly improper behavior, showed clear displeasure on his face and shot Xian Li a fierce glare. The great hall was utterly silent, with only Xian Li's voice echoing through the air, like a stone thrown into a calm lake. Stirring ripples upon ripples, seeing the emperor's face darken instantly, all the civil and military officials in the court immediately knelt down. The emperor had always been benevolent, even the fierce battles at the frontier had never provoked his anger. This Xian Li truly knows no bounds. Daring to provoke the emperor's wrath, bold youth, do you admit your guilt? The emperor's voice was like the icy wind of winter, sharp and chilling. "Your Majesty, Xuanli already has someone in his heart and cannot betray her." Xuanli's body trembled, but he did not retreat. Instead, he raised his head to look at the emperor, his gaze firm and resolute. "Oh," the emperor frowned, asking with great displeasure, "who is the one in your heart?" Without hesitation, Xuanli pointed toward Yu Niang outside the hall. "It is her." As soon as these words were spoken, all the civil and military officials in the court were startled like birds in a cage. Yu Niang was originally a lowly maid in the Marquis's household. How could she be compared to the noble and delicate eldest princess? This is nothing short of a great provocation against His Majesty. I stood by, watching the Marquis's panicked expression without showing any emotion, and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. After all his scheming, he ended up defeated by his own beloved son. The moment I saw Xian Li and Yu Niang together, I had already foreseen this outcome. Their love was destined from their previous life. I know Xian Li's character well. Once he fell for Yu Niang, he would never set his heart on another woman. The emperor's expression grew increasingly grim, and the Marquis was so anxious that sweat poured down his face as he repeatedly begged for forgiveness. The emperor looked toward me, and I seized the opportunity to step forward, kneeling beside Xuanli, and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, please calm your anger. This humble wife has failed in teaching her son. Madam, I ask you, did you know that your son was involved with that Yu Niang?" "Your Majesty, I did not know," I replied. "How could I not have known? But I needed to show my magnanimity before the court officials and make the emperor despise the Marquis and his son even more. I am willing to bear all the blame for the Marquis household." A flicker of complex emotion passed through the emperor's eyes. I understood this emperor all too well. He would not offend me. A daughter of the Lin family, for the sake of a mere nominal Marquis household, how could the status of a Marquis household compare to the position my father and brothers held in the emperor's heart? "Rise, madam," the emperor said with an air of authority. "Madam, you have contributed to the state's development and managed the Marquis household diligently. What crime could you possibly have committed? Guards, drag that wretched servant woman outside the hall and beat her to death with clubs." The golden dragons carved upon the imperial throne seemed ready to soar into the air and devour everyone present. The emperor's voice echoed through the palace hall. "The lowly servant Yuanyang, for seducing the imperial son-in-law Xian Li, shall be executed. In consideration of the Marquis household's meritorious service in defending the state, the Marquis household is pardoned." The heart-wrenching screams from outside the hall were drowned out by the sound of beating clubs. Xian Li's face turned ashen. He had lost the woman he loved. Xian Li was about to argue when the Marquis rushed over without letting him speak, delivering 3 resounding slaps, then knelt before the emperor, begging for his rebellious son's life to be spared. How could the emperor possibly kill Xian Li? It was likely that letters seeking a marriage alliance from the northern frontier had been sent one after another. The Marquis's request for an imperial marriage at this moment conveniently solved the emperor's urgent problem. The imperial edict for the marriage soon arrived at the Marquis's residence. However, Xian Li had brought back Yuanyang's corpse and spent his days weeping in grief. He completely suffered a mental breakdown, chanting Yuanyang's name all day long in the residence. The emperor did not care whether he was mad or not. Even if he were mad, it would not hinder the Grand Princess's marriage. The emperor only wished to ensure his daughter would not be married off to a distant land. All of this was within my plans. There was no need to drive them to their deaths. Only by letting them suffer endlessly in agony could my hatred be truly avenged. The Marquis's beloved Xuanli had gone mad, and from then on, the Marquis himself fell gravely ill, contracting consumption. The Marquis's estate gradually declined into obscurity. Only the pear trees I had planted throughout the manor remained, blooming and bearing fruit each year, still flourishing. I am still, of course, the virtuous and capable mistress of the Marquis estate, tending to the ailing Marquis, overseeing the mentally unstable adopted son, and my noble character has earned widespread praise from both the court and the common people. Another year, and the pear blossoms in the Marquis estate are in full bloom once more. The pure, unblemished white stretches as far as the eye can see. Though I am now the female prime minister of the court, I still remain at the estate, caring for the old, weak, and ailing Marquis and his son. As the night grows cooler, I stand beneath the twilight, pear blossom petals drifting down onto my shoulders. They, too, have witnessed the rises and falls of my 2 lifetimes.